here.
Yay.
Amy will not be able to join us today. I see David Deviney. Is that correct? David, are you here?
David's here.
Great. Then Mike Geister here. Josh Herring is here. Josh Kaczynski is here. Yes, Josh Kaczynski.
I am here.
Great, perfect. Susie Lacer. Here. Ruth Linos.
Here.
Sherry Moore will join us late. Eugene Organ is here. I chatted with him when he got into the call. David Reeser.
Here.
Philip Shimhu.
I am here.
And then Franny Brindle.
Here.
Emily Secord.
I'm here.
And Carl. Carly.
I'm here, thanks.
Great.
So is there anybody here whose name we did not call?
Hi there, my name is Erica Abbey, and I'm with LTD and work with John Allen.
Great, okay. And Rachel, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you are?
Hi, I'm Rachel Dorfman with LCOG. I'm working with Kate.
Great.
Hi guys, this is Wendy Frisbee. I'm also with LTD. I'm the procurement manager.
Okay.
And
This is Robin Mayo. I'm also with LTD. I'm the IT director.
And I'll chime in. This is Tiffany Edwards, also with LTD, the Intergovernmental Relations Manager.
I thought I saw you there. Okay, so welcome everybody. The meeting today should be fairly simple. How about David Deviney? Is he here?
Yes.
Did you call him, Kate?
David's here.
Okay, great. Okay.
Hi, Mike.
Howdy. So it should be a fairly simple meeting today because a lot of our meeting will basically be a general overview of projects to date. And that list may continue to be a little bit flexible. So this is sort of an update, touch base kind of a meeting. There are a couple of things though that we need to take care of in terms of business. One is that I would like to introduce our 3 new members and have them tell you a little bit about who they are. So I see Josh Kaczynski. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Josh Kaczynski. I am on the Eugene Active Transportation Committee. So I'm here as a bike and pedestrian advocate. I also work at the University of Oregon in the Transportation Services Department as the Active Transportation Coordinator. But as I'm sure David Reeser will make clear, I am not here as a representative of the university.
Thank you. So David, how about if you go next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is David Reeser, and I've worked with many of you throughout the years, perhaps in different roles. And I represent the UFO Transportation Services Department, and like Josh Kaczynski said, he and I work together, and I'm here to represent Transportation Services in this meeting, and looking forward to the upcoming discussion and future work.
Thanks, David. Philip, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Name is Philip Shimhu. I lived here for about 2 years. I'm on the Stiff Advisory Committee as well as the SCC Committee. I work for St. Vinny's, but I am not a representative of them.
Great. So you have 2 Philips, 2 Davids, and 2 Joshes. This is going to be an exciting meeting. So there's a couple of other things in terms of business that we need to take care of. We will be coming to a slide where there are going to be some dates that we're going to suggest changing. And then we also, slide number 5, when we get to that, will be to discuss maintaining existing services, which is kind of a new little wrinkle for this year because of COVID. And those are basically the two pieces of actual business that we want to be sure to take care of today. I will open the floor for audience participation. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a statement? Okay. So let's jump down to the SIF Advisory Committee potential schedule change. So there we go. Yeah, slide number 5, I think it is. So you can see today, we aren't going to need the meeting on the 17th of November, but we would like to add a meeting on the 22nd of December. And if that's going to be a problem for anybody, could you please wave your hand at me? I'd just like to see how many folks might have difficulty making that December 22nd meeting.
Okay. I could simply note that I may be in a place with limited internet. I may be there by phone, which of course would relieve people of my wonderful visage, and I think that would be just fine.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so we'll plan to keep that schedule. And you can scratch the 17th of November off and call that free time. How about if, Kate, you want to go to the start of the slideshow and kind of run us through the slides that you have prepared for us?
Yep, I really want to touch base on why we're changing schedule, and it's really mostly because the ODOT notice of solicitation for the formula funds ended up not coming out until yesterday, which was a little bit later than what we had initially anticipated. So that's why we are asking everyone to shift a little bit to give our public transit service providers time in our county to be able to submit applications for formula funds. You're going to probably hear me say the word draft about 1,000 times today, because I do want to keep reminding everyone that this solicitation just came out. And so any projects we talk about today are just draft projects. And we as LCOG have not yet issued a formal call for projects. So any projects we talk about today are just the draft ones that could change budgets or project names, et cetera, in the next month. But we will tomorrow issue the formal call for projects. And then by the end of this month, we'll actually have them submit their projects. So at your December 8th meeting, you'll actually be able to look and see what the formula fund project list is. And then those next 3 meetings will primarily be devoted to hearing about those projects from the providers. And then the other piece of it that we're not going to talk about much at all today is about, at some point, you all will be asked to make recommendations about the projects, the other STIF funds, the discretionary and intercommunity funds, which those applications were submitted to ODOT yesterday, but we're not exactly sure on the timeline and when they will ask for your comments on them. So at some point in one of those 3 meetings, that's when we'll try to talk about those as well. So that's just kind of high level why we've asked for this change to December 22nd. And then, yes, so in your packet, you will see that you all spent a lot of time and energy last cycle to help develop a project list for the STIF plan. But because of COVID, and again, a major focus of STIF originally was that funds should not be supplanting service, but they should be new services. But and so for things like service preservation, funds were not really originally supposed to be allocated to allow for that. But because of COVID, the SB 1601 is now allowing public transit service providers to use funds that they had originally put towards one project to instead go towards service preservation to make sure they can maintain what they already had planned and en route before. So service providers can backdate just from July 7th of this year and then onward for the rest of this fiscal year. So if they need to have funds, then to cover just their normal operating service, they can use those funds from what would have been a new project. And a piece of that, and this all just came out since y'all's last meeting, but a piece of that is that you all must concur that these are good service preservation expenditures. So I have in your packet a little bit more information. At this time, LTD is the only service provider who has actually asked to change some of a future project's funds to instead be used for service preservation. And it's just for one of their projects. So originally in the STIF plan, there was a budget to increase the Diamond Express to run a Saturday pilot service. But LTD has instead requested that Diamond Express continues to run at the same level it's been running at right now, which is 3 trips per day, per weekday. So it's just Monday through Friday. And they were proposing that they take $16,136 of that $50,000 budget to instead go towards maintaining that service operation as it is right now. The rest of the funds would then mean that that would not get spent on the Saturday pilot, and instead those funds would roll over into the next biennium, and so they would still be used locally here in Lane County. But you all, as you start to think about projects for the next time around, would instead be looking at potential projects that could be used with that, the rest of that $50,000. That's a lot of talking. So for now, it's really just to ask you all if you concur and you think that this is a good idea to change some of this that would be dedicated for that Saturday pilot to instead operate the service level as it is now. We do have LTD staff here if there are any specific questions about this project.
That's what I wanted to ask, is if there's anybody from LTD that would like to explain, just give us a thumbnail sketch of why you'd like to continue this service at a much reduced cost from the 50K and not go forward with the Saturday service.
Sure. Mike, this is Cosette Reese, the Director of Specialized Services. And due to COVID, we decided not to implement that Saturday pilot in fiscal year 21. However, part of the budget that we had for the regular service included efficiencies that would be gained by adding that Saturday pilot. Because we've decided not to do that, we'd like to apply that $16,000 toward the regular service just to balance it out. And then we'll be applying for the Saturday pilot in the next biennium.
Thanks, Cosette.
Thank you.
So any other questions from members of the committee?
Mike, my question, this is David. Is the 16,000 specifically allocated to the Diamond Express project, just not the Saturday pilot, or is it back into general fund for LTD?
So this is Cosette. That $16,000 would go toward to support the current service that's operating for the Diamond Express. It does not go into LTD general fund.
Thank you.
This
I'm looking
is
to see. Josh, was that you? Who's that?
Yeah, this is Josh K, just to clarify. Is this existing service level that you're maintaining the same as the pre-COVID service level, or is it a reduced service level from that?
So we're currently operating our pre-COVID Diamond Express level of service. Again, we had expected to gain some efficiencies as we implemented the Saturday pilot, and because we've decided not to do that, we've lost some of those efficiencies. So we just want to ensure that there's no interruption in service for the regular Diamond Express pre-COVID level of service.
Any other questions or comments?
Mike, this is David.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
David.
Would it be possible to clarify the efficiencies that we lost? It just isn't making a whole lot of sense to me that we drop a service on a Saturday and the existing service that we had is no longer as efficient. So I'm just not understanding the math in my head, so to speak.
This is John Allen with Lane Transit. I can speak to that. So as part of our plans for STIF expansion projects, we had intended to increase the number of trips on the Diamond Express from 3 to 4, and then add a Saturday pilot. Because this is a fixed route service, we have to factor in, say, the number of drivers or operators that are running the vehicles, things like insurance costs, overall overhead, things like that. So as we're increasing the number of trips or days that the service is offered, our estimation is that the overall overhead of the service gets cheaper per trip or per mile, depending on how you count. So because we're not allowing for those expansions for this current year, mainly due to COVID, it leaves us in a position where we're having to make up the difference. And so that's the estimated $16,136 currently. We are planning on putting in applications for continuing the Saturday pilot and the addition of the 4th trip, but the timing just isn't right currently. So we're looking to a future biennium, so the upcoming biennium, to be able to implement that.
Explanation.
Well, I think what I understood you to say, I think, is that you have fixed costs, some of which do not change when you reduce the number of trips, and therefore the cost per trip goes up.
That's accurate, yes.
The question I have, if you could identify for us, John, what happens with these trips when they get into Eugene, how well are they meeting up with other system connections if we were to not have these trips in place?
So we currently, our Diamond Express service currently stops through Eugene Station as well as the Amtrak station. So while an increase in the number of trips, we would expect to allow additional options and connections. We see reduced service levels currently across the board. And so expansion of services doesn't really make sense from our perspective in our current COVID environment. And instead, we feel like we can still make the critical connections between Oak Ridge and the metro community. We're still interlined with Amtrak, and we still allow for connections at Eugene Station just less frequently than we otherwise would have planned for.
So right now there's meets that are happening effectively, and it would just get better if there's 3 more trips.
What we currently have 3 trips per day, which is what we're proposing to maintain on weekdays. In our expansion plans, which we have put on hold, that would include the addition of a 4th trip on weekdays and a pilot project for Saturday service. Currently, there's no weekend service on the Diamond Express.
Thank you.
Good questions. Any other questions? So Kate, do you need actual motion, or do you just need a head nod or thumbs up?
I think probably it just needs to be thumbs up. It would be fine. If you
Okay.
all.
So from committee members, if that sounds good to you, let's give the thumbs up. And let's see, there's people I can't see.
If it's easier to just say the names, we can do that as well. If you want me to quickly ask people.
Okay, Phil Barnhart.
Yes.
You have to take yourselves off mute. Okay, Amy's not here. David Davini.
Yes.
Me, yes. Josh H. Josh Herring.
Yeah, definitely.
Josh Kaczynski.
Yes.
Susie Lacer.
Yes.
Ruth Linos.
Yes.
Sherry, have you joined us yet? Eugene,
Yes.
thanks. David Reeser,
Yes.
Philip Shimu, Philip, are you muted?
He gave you a thumbs up.
Okay, great, okay. I think those are all the voting members. Did I miss anybody, Kate? Okay, thank you. That was one of the pieces of business that we needed to act on. Do you want to take us through the rest of your slide pack?
Yes. So, so like I said, tonight we're going to look really briefly at the potential projects that two of the PTSP, I use that phrase a lot, the PTSP, the public transportation service providers, have submitted to us. Originally, with our original timeline, we really wanted to have providers give us a notice of intent a few weeks ago, but we couldn't ask for that because we didn't have the guidance out yet from ODOT. So sorry, not to throw ODOT under the window. They have a lot going on right now. So, but so instead we did still have LTD and LCOG give us their projects, but we anticipate at least one more project coming in. And like I said, we'll do a full project list. So tonight I'm just going to ask the different providers to talk about their projects briefly. I'm actually going to ask Kelly Clark from LCOG to speak first about her projects, mostly because she has a small number of them. And then we'll go back and ask LTD to discuss theirs. So, and also really quick, as a reminder, in future meetings, we'll have maps of this up, but ODOT does distinguish between out-of-district funds that are out of LTD's boundary and in-district funds, which are in LTD's boundary. And so primarily LCOG is asking for funds out of LTD's boundary, but they do have one project that it runs in and out of the boundary, but I'll let Kelly talk about that. Kelly is here.
Hi all, my name is Kelly Clark. I'm a project manager for LCOG's transit services. And we will be submitting requests for formula funds for our two routes. The Florence to Yachats connector is a route that we have managed since September 2019, and it is operated by River Cities Taxi. We applied to STIF intercommunity discretionary funds. Just yesterday submitted our application for the kind of the bulk of the funding to continue that route for the next STIF biennium, operations of that route for the next STIF biennium. The formula funds that we're requesting here will be to be used as match for that funding. And then our second, so we'll be applying for continued operational funds as well as a bus, a replacement vehicle for that route as well. That's a bus that operates close to 200 miles a day through coastal conditions. It'll be towards the end of its useful operating life at the end of the next STIF biennium. And so in that second year, we're requesting funds to purchase a bus. Again, the bulk of those funds we've requested from the discretionary pot, so the statewide pot, but what we're requesting through the formula funds will be used as match for that as well. And then our other project that we'll be requesting funds for is our Florence to Eugene intercommunity route. And we began that route in February 18 of this year and operated for just a couple of weeks before COVID hit us. And we've been operating since. That route, we consider it a very a testament, I guess, for community-led support and demand for service, and we were able to translate that into STIF funding. So we're super excited about that. And the funds is similar to the Florence to Yachats route. We submitted for the bulk of funding through the STIF discretionary, so the statewide pot, and the funds here will be to use as match. That route operates 7 days a week, 2 round trips a day, and our grant application for the current STIF biennium had requested or included funds for a third midday route that would run 4 days a week And the intent with that was to align with the Coos County area transit route that goes between Coos County and Florence. We've had some fleet capacity constraints, but anticipate being able to get that fourth route up and running in this next biennium. So we've included costs for that as well. I'm happy to answer any questions about either of those.
I'm assuming, this is Phil Barnhart, I'm assuming that the replacement bus, that's only a small portion of the actual cost of the bus. The rest of the money's coming from somebody else or allocated to a different year?
Yeah, exactly. The replacement bus, we've requested the bulk of the funding from the STIF discretionary pot. Again, that statewide pot, which is a competitive pot of money statewide, but still STIF funded. So the bulk of funding will come from that. And what we're requesting here, the $34,000 will be used as match for that.
And I assume we don't know what equipment we're talking about buying yet.
It'll be similar to what that route is using today. So it's a 10-passenger bus with ADA stations, so ADA compliant, and it's sufficient in size for that route. And so we don't anticipate needing to go larger.
Right. Of course, by that time, you'll probably have as an option an electric vehicle that will cost less money to operate.
That would be lovely if that's an option. I don't know if the area will have the infrastructure that we'll need to be able to use electric bus, but
we're working on that on other advisory committees.
Okay.
How is the range for an electric bus?
If you're asking me, the answer is it depends on what you want it to be and how many batteries and how big a battery you put in it. If you want it to be able to run 200 miles, then you put in a battery that will take you 250 miles. If you only need it to run 100 miles, you put in a battery that runs 125 miles. One of the lovely things about a fixed route system is that you build a vehicle that works for you.
Other questions? Thanks.
I have a quick question, if I could. This is David Reeser. Hi, Kelly.
Hey.
I may have missed this, but did you say the STIP funding that's already approved, or is that just something that you all applied for and are waiting to hear back on?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We just submitted our applications yesterday. So the deadline to submit applications was yesterday. So it's kind of tracking along with a similar timeline as the formula funds are. And so we don't know yet if we will have, if that funding will be approved. These two projects, the Florence to Eugene route and the Florence to Yachats connector, ranked 1 and 2 in the state for the discretionary statewide application pool last year. So we feel really confident about those two applications. And we have a lot of demonstrated community support and stakeholder support that were integrated into the application. So we feel good about our chances.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I remember this being discussed regionally for years, so it's nice to see this on here. But one question I have, if the STIP, for some reason, if that weren't approved, and then this group, if we all supported this, would there be kind of a plan B on how to use those funds, or how would that work logistically?
Kate, do you know the timing for the two applications, how that will align?
I do, but it'll take me just a minute to pull that up. So maybe I can come, if there's any other questions, I can come up and I can.
So while Kate's looking that up, I'll remind the group that we're not actually looking for approval today or recommendation today. This is more of a familiarization discussion right now.
And maybe that's a question that I think it's a technical question about how those two funding opportunities are aligning timeline. And so that's something that we can look into and return with you. But I think that there is, an inherent risk with a lot of these projects, given the two funding streams. But not receiving the discretionary funding will jeopardize these two routes because we don't have LCOG, Lane Council of Governments, does not have a taxing structure similar to LTD, and so we don't have excess funds right now to run the routes. But I will. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, since there's no action that's required of the committee today, I think that'd be just fine to, have those details followed up on if you guys had other things. I didn't mean to necessarily steer us away.
Other questions for Kelly?
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
I will mention, I failed to mention, one of our partners for the Eugene to Florence route is the Confederated Tribes of Kuzlo, Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians. They were a strong partner throughout the planning and implementation of this route and have contributed the formula funds in the current STIF biennium, and they have contributed the bus that we're currently running on that route. And they will continue to be a partner in this upcoming STIF biennium and are also requesting formula funds from their own pool of funds.
Thanks, Kelly.
And actually, yeah, go ahead.
Other questions for Kelly? Thank you. Kate, did you want to move us to a different item?
Yeah, we can go ahead and talk now about LTD's projects.
All right.
Tom Schwartz, I think, is going to be the main. He's going to briefly talk about each of them, and LTD has more projects than LCOG does. So, but I'll let Tom take over from here and go to the top of. We'll start with in district for LTD, I think.
Oops. There we go. And actually, I'm going to play the role of facilitator. I'm going to briefly go over these projects, but we have representatives that represent each project that I think can speak to and answer any questions. Like Kate said, we have several projects that we're proposing for funding. I'm going to step through some of these were projects that we funded last year. For example, the Mobility on Demand in Cottage Grove. We're basically looking for additional funding for continued operation of that connector service. And again, I can speak to, or actually we have folks that can talk to the current status of that service and all. We have a technology project looking at and this is, as the description says, an interagency project that we're going to work on to create basically an app that can be used by people to identify a variety of ways in which they can complete their trip and then pay for that trip using a mobile wallet. If you recognize that project, that's on the discretionary list as well. Mobility on Demand pilots. Again, we feel we learned a lot in pilots that for MGO, for example, and the Cottage Grove service that we want to continue to develop these pilot services to gain more experience on how those how different ways of mobility might feed into and integrate with our current services. The mobility management plan is really an overarching longer term look at LTD's role in the region in terms of looking at multiple forms of mobility and is intended to enable us to strategically assess each of these opportunities and understand how our role might best fit the needs of the community in that context. Real-time signage, like the sign says, this will be updating and replacing some of our real-time signs on the original MX lines and actually match them up with some of the newer technology we have out there on the system today. Real-time predictive software to increase the accuracy of our real-time predictions for bus service. We can speak more to what that is, but I think that's self-explanatory. And then sign management software, as the description says, will allow us to remotely manage the signs on our MX platforms. currently, those signs have to be updated manually. So I think that's the first page, Kate. In addition to those on the first page, we're looking for funding to create what we're calling a transit resilience plan. In this pandemic period, we're starting to understand more about what our needs are in terms of how we can create a resilient system to best serve the community. So that's what that plan would be about. Then we're looking at right source shopper expansion of our operations there. And again, we have folks that can speak more specifically to what those expansions of the shopper service would look like. Same kind of thing with right source shopper for a vehicle. So expanding service operations, we need another vehicle to do that. The ADA paratransit service, this would be service to provide origin and destination for individuals who are unable to utilize fixed route. And again, if you have questions about that, people are on the line that can help with that. Rolling stock, up to 12 vehicles per year for each year. To replace our ride source fleet. The student fare programs and the low income fare programs, basically a continuation of those programs from the last round. And again, we can get into the details if you have questions. Platform validators. As you know, we moved to an electronic fare system this year and are looking to put validators on our MX platforms to facilitate the use of our electronic fare system for MX. The rolling stock fixed route, that's just money that would match federal funds for the purchase of electric vehicles. Stiff administration, this is an ongoing cost, and it is basically what we've determined over the last round with respect to what it costs to administer those grants. And then the Florence to Eugene intercommunity route is an LCOG project, which I think Kate, you mentioned.
Questions for LTD?
I had a question about the Ride Source ADA paratransit service. Is that for you, John?
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Sure. The only thing I'm curious about is currently the service seems to be focused on essential trips only. What's the intent with this much of a budget in future years?
That's a great question. So we can't predict the future of service, but we are trying to plan for service in a post-COVID environment. And so currently on many of our services, that means we have either routes that are on reduced service or on hiatus. And on our ride source service, as with all of our current services, we're asking members of the public to try and limit their public transportation to trips that have an urgent and essential need, just as a response to COVID. And so ride source has been no exception to that. Our expectation would be that in a post-COVID environment, we want to be able to fully fund the service levels so that these can provide paratransit trips for older adults and people with disabilities who may not be able to access our fixed route service. So our hope would be that we can reach a point where they would not be limited as with any of our current services in that way. But because we can't predict the future, what we are trying to do is plan the upcoming biennium accordingly, assuming that we can resume those service levels.
Sure. Has there been currently a savings that's been experienced if there's not as much paratransit operating because there aren't as many trips, or is it a cost no matter what, regardless of how much of the route system is operating?
That's a good question. A more complicated answer to that may take some more time, but in short, we still incur significant costs through our ride source system.
Okay.
We are facing new and different costs as a result of COVID that we hadn't previously anticipated, but we are doing less trips. So we're still evaluating how the overall impacts to us financially, but we are certainly continuing to incur costs. And to be clear, the Ride Source 88 paratransit service is a mandatory system that we provide that's complementary to our fixed route system. So if people have an urgent need or a trip that has to happen, we provide it. And so we incur that cost.
Great. Can you answer a vehicle question for Ride Source?
I will do my best.
Else? Okay. Is there going to be a different type of vehicle that's going to be looked at that's going to fit better with the COVID criteria, just as a general question?
That's a great question. So we're currently undertaking a fleet procurement plan. And so one of the primary goals of that has actually been, this has been in the works before COVID had impacted our community. And one of the primary intentions of that was to explore the use of alternative fuels for our vehicles. So we're absolutely looking at different vehicle types and being creative with our fleet to right size that for the needs of our community. We're certainly open to exploring different vehicle types to better suit our community. And so that's intended to be part of the work of the upcoming fleet procurement plan that we're currently working on.
Phil,
Thank you.
Did you have anything else, Ruth?
No.
Okay,
thank you.
Go ahead, Phil.
I think he may have just answered the question that I'm going to ask every time when we talk about vehicle procurement. And that is, what are the planning toward, I think you said alternate fuels, I'm going to say electricity. The reason, of course, for asking the question is that by the time any vehicle you buy in 2023 has reached the end of its useful life, if it's fueled on gasoline or diesel, you won't be able to get fuel for it, in my view. And so when you're looking at the likely age of these vehicles, you really have to consider alternate fuels, especially electricity, if you can.
I know that's certainly under consideration. As part of the fleet procurement plan, I know a variety of different alternate fuels are going to be considered. So I think typically the ones that I've seen used in other communities include CNG, hydrogen, electric, certainly some others, and possibly some other technologies being developed that I'm not aware of. So we're looking to explore all of those as potential options.
Right. I guess what I'm referring to is that depending upon the outcome of the election today, and I have some fervent wishes about that, it may well be that the phasing out of fossil fuels will lead to a crimp in operations for anybody who's still trying to use them for transit over the next several years. I don't know how many, a decade maybe.
Okay, LTD, you have heard it there. Eugene, did you have anything you wanted to ask about?
I simply wanted to, well, there were two things. One is I wanted to add my support for the shopping vehicle. And I would really like to see the refrigeration unit put back in. Originally, when that vehicle went into service, there was a freezer where people could put frozen items they bought at the grocery store, and that's been taken out. And I'm wondering if there's any way of restoring that?
That's a great, great question and comment. So the shopper service is a 30-foot vehicle that we've used on as part of our ride source fleet. Unfortunately, this service is currently on hiatus with so many of our current services as a result of COVID. But the intention was that the shopper service was both a social outing as well as an opportunity to do shopping for local community members. So this is going to places like Walmart or Winco or Fred Meyer, where a group of either older adults or people with disabilities could go together, get their shopping done, receive assistance from our driver, including having a compartment for keeping cold or frozen goods cool, and it's origin and destination service. So we're taking a group together, all going over to Winco and then taking everyone right to their homes. They're not dealing with transfers or lengthy travel times, but it also creates kind of this social opportunity for an outing. However, this isn't the best environment for us to be getting a bunch of people together in the same vehicle. And so we currently have the service on hiatus, but as part of our projects, we believe there's demand certainly to expand the service. This has been something that we've had a lot of interest in our community to be able to run it more often and in more places. And so typically, I think for many community members, we've been able to run it one day a week within their neighborhood to a shopping area. But what we've included as part of our request would be funding for an additional vehicle, which can include something like a refrigeration unit or cooler for frozen goods, as well as the operation costs to be able to run it.
Any follow-up, Eugene?
I have a second question. It deals with the Florence Eugene run. What I heard an item in there about that run, and I was wondering what this funding provided in that respect.
Get me to take that?
Go ahead, Kelly, if you've got that information.
Sure. As Kate alluded to, the bulk of what LCOG is requesting for the Eugene to Florence route is from out-of-district funds from LTD, but a portion is from in-district because a portion of that route is in LTD's actual district boundary. And so we've just apportioned the two amounts based on the distance of the route. But both, it'll come in one application, and they'll both be for continued operations for the next biennium and to be used as match for the bigger pot of statewide funding from the discretionary.
Anything else, Eugene?
Lastly, I want to second Phil's remarks regarding the electric vehicles and the alternative to the gasoline-powered vehicles. I think that's where we're going, and we have to be willing to go there as well.
Well, Phil has reminded us several times that these are kind of long-term decisions and things are going to change in the next 10 years. So good to keep that in mind. Other questions? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, quick question and a comment. So the first comment I was going to say was I was really pleased to see the mobility as a service software project in here. That's something that the University of Oregon has been brainstorming with LTE, and we're very excited as a possibility with the mobile wallet. So that's great, really supportive of that. My question is about the transit resilience plan, and it talks in the description about helping identify priorities, which is very important. I was wondering if that plan might also look at like supplemental funding sources or things like that during economic downturns.
Who's the right person for that?
This is AJ. Tom, would you be the right person to talk about that?
You're muted, Tom.
Sorry, I'm muted. And actually, David, can you just reiterate your question? I was following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, you bet. Yeah, I was asking about the transit resilience plan. In the project description, it talks about this project would help develop priorities, which of course makes a lot of sense. But I was wondering, in addition to that, would it also do any kind of recommendations or investigation into any supplemental funding sources? Because I know that during these economic downturns that with the payroll tax and whatnot, that often it's the time when people need the most service that things get cut, and it's really just the structure of the funding system. So I was wondering, in part, to make LTD more resilient, is there any ability to look into supplemental funding sources?
Sure. I think, that's a really good question, David. I think, in fact, what we've been, what little experience we've had so far with the STIF program is a good example of a funding source that we didn't have before that we're able to put. I mean, and you're seeing kind of how we're planning to use that funding. And in the context of the resilience plan, this really comes out of our experience navigating through the pandemic, and we've had to reduce our service relative to the resources that we have, but also we know that the community continues to have mobility needs, and the extent to which we can develop an approach that allows us to sustain a certain level of service over time, and to basically this will help us prepare for again the ups and downs that we experience. Even outside of the COVID experience, the economy goes up and down, and we've had to cut service and add service and things like that. So it just would give us a better sense of how to approach these kinds of situations in a way that can really be prepared to sustain a certain level of service over a period of time. Does that answer your question?
For the most part, yeah. Again, I think it makes sense to really focus on those top priorities during economic downturns. And I'm thinking back to the Great Recession too, and when LT also had to make big cuts. And I guess, and we could talk offline, but I was really interested in would there be any investigation or research into supplemental funding sources? But perhaps that's not something that's even out there or available. I know, LT, that you guys often have to think about the payroll tax and issues. So anyways, I'd be happy to talk more later with you.
Yeah, no, I'd appreciate that.
Okay,
thanks, David.
Yeah.
So Kate, shall we move the slideshow along?
I think I'd like.
Oh, somebody had something?
This is Ruth. I just wanted to follow up on David's comments and Tom's responses. What's positive about all of these projects that LTD is proposing is those are project expenses that if STIF is paying for them and putting in place tools that make public transportation operate better, one would hope that when payroll tax going into the general fund is at whatever level it is, a high percentage of that funding can go for service. And that I would see is the big plus of supporting what we can with the money available.
Thanks, Ruth.
So this is the out of district funds. We talked about the LCOG ones, but Tom, do you want to take the lead on the
Maybe John might be better to take the group through these.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So to speak to each project, we had mentioned earlier the Diamond Express expansions. And so these are two separately funded projects. One to add an additional trip each weekday. So we're currently doing 3 trips each weekday, and we'd look to expand that to 4, as well as start a Saturday service pilot. So we've heard some interest in being able to explore weekend trips to Oak Ridge. And so we would undertake that. So those were projects as part of this current biennium that we've put on hiatus that we'd look to implement in the future. So this upcoming biennium when we're in a post-COVID environment. To be able to better support the service, we also need a new vehicle for the Diamond Express. So the Diamond Express currently uses a 40-foot bus similar to what we would use in our fixed route service. And so we currently have in place an older refurbished vehicle, and we also support a dial-a-ride service in the Oak Ridge community to bring older adults to a meal site. And so as our current vehicle ages, we need to get something new in place, in particular to be able to support these expansions. We also have funding for both a Roadie Express expansion in Florence and a vehicle to support that. So to be clear, the expansion of the Roadie Express would require a new vehicle in place. So these projects are interdependent in that if we were to increase the frequency of the Roadie Express service or to increase the area in which it serves, it would need an additional vehicle. And so we have that programmed in as well. So that's for our services in the city of Florence. We also have a small amount allocated towards STIF out of district reserve. And I believe those are all of the LTD projects that we have in the out of district, but I'd be happy to field any questions that the group might have.
Eugene, any questions on these out of district projects?
No, I didn't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Welcome, Sherry Moore. Councilor Sherry Moore is here.
Hey, Sherry. This is Phil. I won't belabor it, but I'll make the same comment about these vehicles as about the others I've already expressed an opinion about.
Are we ready to go to LCOG? Oh, wait, we've already done.
Yeah, LCOG's already done theirs. So I think if there's no more questions about the projects, the only thing I wanted to mention is the overall budgets. And I just realized during this meeting that you can't see my ODOT estimated funding at the bottom of these slides, but they are also in your packets. And ODOT did update those numbers at the end of last week, what they anticipate will come in this next biennium. And so I just want to reiterate, so what ODOT's estimates are just for what they anticipate for the next 2 years. And they freely say that they haven't had enough cycles to really know. So these are very much guesses and educated guesses, but and COVID, of course, could potentially affect those down the line. But another thing to also keep in mind when thinking about the upcoming budget is that any money that was not used in this existing biennium will roll over and be able to be used in future bienniums. So the committee will be given funding for more projects or there will be more funding available than what ODOT estimates are for both the in district and the out of district. So I just want to make sure everyone, when you see those giant discrepancies that exist right now, that's part of it, is because some of these projects have rolled over and will need to be reapplied for, and there will be additional funds available for that.
So
and
what Kate just said is important. The money that rolls forward does not stay in the same project budget bucket. It has to be reapplied for.
Yes, that is correct. So that will be good to keep in mind. So hopefully I'll be working with the transit providers in the next few months to find out from them what their estimates of what they think their rollover will be and what they will not use in this biennium, which will then need to be reallocated for the next biennium.
So I think we're coming to a close here. I will acknowledge that we have a candidate on the ballot who is here tonight, even though she's got a long night ahead of her. Ruth, thank you for making the meeting. And we have a candidate spouse, Josh. I imagine your household is a little exciting tonight. And I don't know if there's any others, but thank you both for being here, even though you've got other things on your mind.
Thank you.
And some of the others of us are just simply addicts, and we'll be staying up anyway.
That's true. So our next meeting is scheduled for December 8th. Is there anything else, Kate, that you can, are there any other questions? Eugene, have you got any general questions that you'd like to, or comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Kate, Rachel, anything?
Nothing else of note. Just as always, let me know if you have any questions about the committee, and if you want to ask anything to me, I'll make sure that the whole committee gets the answer to that question. And I do want to just make a note about the GoToMeeting invite, is that it's not in your packet because the packet gets access to the packet goes out to the whole public. And so the public can call into this meeting, but it isn't on the GoToMeeting itself. So that's why I think there seemed like there was a little bit more confusion about that tonight. So that's why I do send that extra calendar invite. But I will probably also in the future just send an email right before the meeting with the GoToMeeting information.
Thanks.
But I'm sorry for that.
I see your microphone is green. Did you want to make a comment?
I had a question.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you were sending out minutes from this meeting. I'm sorry I missed the first part of it. Were there any changes that I didn't see? I mean, I had read through everything, but
because these meetings are on Metro TV and you can watch them live, we don't have a minutes reporter in the same way that we generally do. But they are. The link is in the latest version of the packet that I sent out.
All right, thank you. But there weren't any major changes from what I'd seen. Okay.
So Carrie, feel free to call me or Kate, and we could go over any details.
All right, thank you.
Anybody? Go ahead.
Back on the link issue, I think it's really great that what she's already done and then sending it again right before the meeting is also fine.
Yeah. So that's very helpful to me. Well, thank you everybody again. Appreciate your being here, and look forward to seeing you on December 8th. And have a happy election night. Take care, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Well done.